Hi, and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for Game of Thrones Season 5, Episode 9, The Dance with Dragons. This video is spoiler-free in the sense it's free of spoilers from the books or any other kind of spoilers, so if you haven't read the books, you are safe. So let's jump right into the episode. It starts off in Stannis' camp where we see Ramsay's elite force wreak havoc and burn away Stannis' food supply. Although we don't actually see Ramsay, we see the effect of what he did, and we know it was him because what he said in last week's episode. And you know, a lot of people were very critical of Ramsay last week, saying this was a really stupid mission. What could he possibly hope to accomplish? But I thought it was a smart move. Rather than just trust that Stannis was going to freeze to death, he decided to take a more active role. And it turns out he was right. He managed to sneak in and destroy the entire food supply and kill a bunch of their horses and destroy all their siege weapons and escape unharmed. Sounds like a pretty successful mission to me. And by doing so, they pretty much guaranteed that Stannis would be defeated. Sir Davos certainly thinks that the mission doesn't have a snowball's chance in hell in succeeding, and he begs Stannis to turn around and go back to Castle Black, but Stannis refuses, and then you see Melisandre and Selyse standing there waiting for him, looking all sinister, and Davos can tell that something is up and that they are up to no good. Next, we go up to Castle Black, where Jon Snow returns with the Wildling refugees. As they approach the wall, you see Sir Alliser Thorne looking out at them, and you wonder if he's going to let them in. He eventually does, but he doesn't seem too happy about it. You then see the Wildlings pass through Castle Black. Sam tries to assure Jon he did the right thing, but the rest of the Night's Watch men are looking pretty peeved. So then we go back to Stannis, who meets with Davos and orders him to go back to Castle Black for food supplies. Davos doesn't want to go and tells him he can simply send a boy with the scroll, but Stannis says he needs to send someone capable of negotiating with Jon Snow should he refuse him. Which does make sense to me because he's asking for a large chunk of the Night's Watch food supplies after Jon Snow specifically told him he didn't have enough food for his men. So Stannis is right to be worried and to send someone capable of negotiating, but let's be honest here, all Stannis is really doing is getting rid of Davos because he's already decided what he's going to do with Shireen, and he knows Davos isn't going to like it. The last time Stannis was going to sacrifice someone to Melisandre was with Gendry, and Davos set him free, even though he thought it would mean his own death. And I had no doubt Davos would do it even more so for Shireen. He wouldn't care what would happen to him. He would give his life to protect Shireen. And Stannis is no dum-dum. He knows that. So he sends Davos away. I think Davos can tell something is up because he asks if Shireen can go with him, but Stannis says no. But I don't think he knows exactly what's up. I think he's going to be quite surprised, not to mention pretty pissed off when he finds out what happens. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if he lost all loyalty to Stannis altogether, which so far has been, his loyalty has been completely unwavering. So in the next scene, we get Davos talking to Shireen, where Shireen tells him about the book she's reading at Dance with Dragons, which refers to a Targaryen civil war in history that involved dragons. It's also the name of the 5th book in the Song of Ice and Fire series, in which this season is partly based on. It's funny, last week Ramsay talked about Leaving a Feast for Crows, which is the name of the other book this season is based on. So the show is going out of their way to give little nods to the books here. The Dance with Dragons also happens to be the name of this episode. Anyway, this scene is just reminding us how cute and innocent a girl Shireen is and how cute her relationship with Davos is right before they rip our heart out. But I'll get to that later on. And of course, the talk about the Dance with Dragons is of course foreshadowing this episode's final scene, which I'll also get to later. So next we go down to Dorne, where Jaime's having a little meeting with Prince Doran, Ellaria Sand, Trystane, and Myrcella. Doran asks why he's come. He tells Doran about the Viper's head with Myrcella's necklace that he received as a threat. Myrcella mentions that her necklace was stolen out of her room, and Ellaria has this look of defiance on her face, making it pretty obvious she was the one who did it. Now, I know a while back there was a lot of speculation out there of where that necklace came from. Some people were saying maybe it was Cersei who planted it in order to manipulate Jaime into bringing Myrcella home. Others suggested it was Littlefinger that sent her the necklace that Joffrey gave Sansa in order to create chaos. But it turns out it was just Ellaria Sand all along, who was being a bit obvious about her plans to kill Myrcella. Doran asks if it's King Tommen's wish to that Myrcella return to King's Landing. Jaime says it is, but it isn't really. It's more of Cersei's wish, but I'm sure Tommen would go along with whatever she said. So Doran says she can return as long as Trystane can go with her, and they proceed with the wedding vows, and that Trystane be named to the small council. Jaime agrees. This is actually some pretty solid negotiating right here, and I do hope it's all part of Doran's master plan to put Trystane on the small council, if he even has a master plan. They drink a toast to King Tommen, but Ellaria dumps her wine out on the floor and then insults Doran. Doran then warns her not to do that again if she wants to live. Jaime then inquires about Bronn, and Trystane agrees to free him under one condition. And then we go down to the cells where two of the Sand Snakes are playing a slapping game that ends with them breaking out in the fight. Arya Hotah then comes in to set Bronn free, but before he goes, Tyene asks him to call her the most beautiful woman in the world, which he does, and Obara calls her a slut. Now, I'm sure a lot of people are going to whine about this scene because, that appears to be the trendy thing to do whenever there's the Sand Snakes appear, but I'd like this scene. Even though it was short, I thought it really helped develop the kind of cheeky, kind of distinct personalities that the Sand Snakes have, and I'm finally starting to get a grip on where they're going with their characters. So then Hotah brings Bronn to the fancy get-together where we learn the condition of Bronn's release as him receiving a big, hard punch to the jaw from Arya Hotah. Doran then offers him some soup. So next we go to Braavos, where Arya's trucking along with her oyster cart and approaches the man whom she sent to kill. You see her, get her little vial of poison out, preparing to do it, but then something catches her eyes. She then completely ignores the thin man, instead stares at the boat arriving, bringing Mace Tyrell, but really catches her eye is the man who is with him, Sir Meryn Trant. Meryn Trant is one out of only 4 people still on her kill list at the beginning of the season, as Trant is the man she thinks that killed her first mentor, Syrio Forel, back in season 1. So Arya then follows the group as Mace meets with Tycho Nestoris from the Iron Bank of Braavos. She waits outside the bank while they go in, and when they come out, it's hard to tell if Mace is making any progress in his negotiation, but he starts singing to Tycho, who doesn't seem to appreciate it. I think they're kind of taking Mace being a bumbling idiot a little too far here. This was a bit over the top. That being said, this scene was funny as hell. Anyway, when we then see Meryn Trant going to a brothel with 2 of his Lannister soldier buddies, while Trant is bitching about Mace and what an idiot he is. Earlier, I predicted that Trant was sent by Cersei to kill Mace Tyrell on this journey, which still yet may be the case. However, they made no indication of it in this scene, so maybe it isn't the case. Anyway, Arya follows them into the brothel, and the prostitute Lara, who is one of her best customers, vouches for her, and she's allowed to stay to sell her oysters. Lara, by the way, was also in season 4, seen in the bathhouse with Salladhor Saan. But at any rate, Arya follows Trant into a back room where he's picking a prostitute, and he keeps saying that they're too old, even when the hostess keeps bringing out girls who are quite young. So finally, she brings out a girl who can't be any older than 13, possibly younger, and finally Trant is satisfied. Oh, that's despicable. Not only is Trant a spineless scum who beats the crap out of Sansa and did other despicable things, he's also a pedophile. I think they're setting it up to make it super sweet once Arya kills him, because she will. So then Arya returns back to the House of Black and White, and Jaqen asks her about how her mission went with the thin man. She tells him he wasn't hungry today, she'll try again tomorrow. So Arya just lied to Jaqen, and there's no way in hell he didn't know. Jaqen has a way of always knowing whenever she lies, no matter how small a lie, and there's no way he didn't know that from this big lie. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if he knew exactly where she was that day. But he doesn't say anything, and I think it's because he's testing her to see what she'll do. So then we go back down to Dorne when Doran makes Ellaria swear allegiance to him in front of the Sand Snakes. He then tells her he believes in second chances but not third chances. We then get a scene with Ellaria talking to Jaime, saying she understands his relationship with his sister and doesn't have a problem with it, and understands that he and Myrcella weren't responsible for Oberyn's death. So I guess this is her making peace with the Lannisters. So as I alluded to earlier, I'm not on board with all the complaining about Dorne. Some of the criticisms have been way over the top in my opinion. However, I do think that this storyline has been a bit of a failure and the weakest link in this season. There was just a lot of pomp and circumstances over this big rebellion with Ellaria and the Sand Snakes, but it all boiled down to one overly choreographed fight scene. It seems kind of a waste and a pale comparison to the storyline that happened in the books. So I'm really hoping that there's more to it in next week's episode, that we get some sort of secret master plan from Doran to make it all worthwhile. So for the moment, I'm reserving judgment for next week. Oh my god. Okay, so I don't even want to talk about this next scene, but here we go. We go back to Stannis in his camp where he meets with Shireen and she talks more about the Dance with Dragons. He ends up having a philosophical discussion with her about what a leader must do, no matter how much he hates it. What he's really doing here is apologizing in advance for what he's about to do to her, and this scene is just so soul-crushing, so heartbreaking. You can see the look of utter defeat in Stannis' face and the naivete of Shireen, who doesn't realize how much of a monster her father is and thinks he actually loves her. So then Shireen gets led out to the pyre where Melisandre is waiting for her, and then she realizes what's going on and starts screaming for her father and mother to help. Selyse actually starts to waver and changes her mind, but Stannis remains stubborn. Selyse tries to save her, but is stopped by Stannis' men as Shireen is burned to death. So first off, it's interesting how they played the old switcheroo here and had Selyse be the one who changed her mind. As all season long, they played up Selyse as being the bitch who doesn't care about her daughter, and Stannis as this great father who loves Shireen. But in the end, it was actually Selyse that got cold feet, while all the way Melisandre seemed to be enjoying it, so I think we know who the real bitch is. Anyway, I would be as bold as to compare this scene to the Red Wedding, as it was just as heartbreaking. It may not have been the end to a whole army, and Shireen was not as a major character as Robb or Catelyn Stark, but I think this was just as, if not more, horrible to listen to this cute little girl we've gotten to know and love, particularly this season, scream while she was being burned alive, and her parents just stood there and let it happen. Was just heart-wrenching. It was just as heart-wrenching as the Red Wedding. I know a lot of people are going to be really upset about this scene. However, this has actually been foreshadowed for a while now, going all the way back to season 4. In fact, I thought they were being too obvious with their foreshadowing. I thought it meant that it might not happen. Although I wasn't sure if they were actually going to go through with killing her, I had predicted that Stannis would change his mind once things got worse for him. In fact, in the prediction video I made for episode 9 and 10 a few days ago, I predicted that Ramsay would attack. His attack would be successful and put Stannis in a really bad spot, so he changed his mind about the whole Shireen thing. And when I first said I thought Stannis would change his mind eventually, I got a whole slew of commenters disagreeing with me, insisting that Stannis would never ever do that, and they predicted things like Selyse would do it behind his back, or that he would reject and kick out Melisandre altogether. But I knew that Stannis valued becoming king and his mission sent from the Lord of Light to be Azor Ahai more than anything. even his daughter, and that eventually he might waver. I know some are going to say they think this was out of character for him and be more angry at the showrunners than the character himself, and those people are entitled to their opinions, but I think this is exactly in keeping with the character of Stannis as he was presented in the show. And still others are going to be upset with this scene because it wasn't in the books, but before jumping to conclusions that George R.R. Martin would never do this, I would watch the Inside the Episode video for this episode and listen closely to what Dan and Dave say, and I won't say anything more about that other than, judging by the Red Wedding and Ned Stark's beheading, this seems like exactly the sort of thing George R.R. Martin would do. Because I knew something was up back in episode 4 this season when we got this heartwarming scene between Stannis and Shireen, where many were ready to name Stannis Father of the Year award, and were going on about how awesome Stannis is. But for me, alarm bells were going off because this reminded me of the scene back in season 3 where Robb Stark and his wife Talisa were sharing a lovely romantic moment by the fire, and she told him about how she was pregnant and everything seemed all lovely and beautiful and all was going to be great. Alarm bells went off as well, and sure enough, in the very next episode, Talisa got stabbed right in the baby-bearing stomach, and Robb got stabbed in the heart. So I didn't know for certain that the scene with Stannis and Shireen meant that she was going to die, but I knew it was setting up something awful was going to happen between them, because that's what the show likes to do, lure us into a false sense of security and then rip our guts out. So next we go off to Meereen, where Daenerys is attending the big event in the fighting pits, and this scene even starts out huge and is probably the biggest scene in scope that Game of Thrones has ever done, set in this huge arena with hundreds of extras. It was definitely really cinematic and just huge cinematic scope. The whole scene, combined with the White Walker battle of last episode, are prime examples of how Game of Thrones' budget was expanded this season due to the show's wild success, as it by far is the most watched show ever to air on HBO. So they watched the first battle, which is between a fast man and a big man. Kind of reminds me of Oberyn versus the Mountain fight last year. That was also a fast man versus a big man. Daario gets an argument with Hizdahr over who will win. Daario insists it will be the fast man, and Hizdahr says it will be the big man. It's kind of a pissing contest between the two, because if you recall, Daario is really jealous of Hizdahr because he's marrying Dany. Anyway, turns out Hizdahr is right, because the big man cuts off the fast man's head, and Hizdahr is certainly smug about it. Hizdahr also gets into a verbal sparring match with Tyrion, which is also really great to see. However, that's interrupted when they realize one of the 6 fighters getting ready to fight is Jorah. You can tell Dany is really conflicted seeing Jorah in the fighting pits, but she signals the start of the fight anyway, and during the fight, Daenerys is definitely on edge. You can tell she doesn't want Jorah to die, which is kind of interesting to see that after all her bluster at how much she hates him and wants him executing, she actually can't bear the thought of him getting killed. The 6-man fight withers down to 4, and Jorah is bested by his opponent and looks like he's going to be killed. Tyrion urges Daenerys to end the fighting, but she doesn't. I think it's obvious Tyrion became more attached to Jorah than he cared to admit, and perhaps he realizes what a great asset he would be to Daenerys. However, the other fighter who had won his fight stabs Jorah's opponent in the back, leaving only the 2 of them. And after a brutal fight, Jorah does this really fancy flip move and kills his opponent. The crowd doesn't seem to like this as they start booing him. What's wrong with Jorah? I guess because he's Westerosi, and the man he killed was the champion of Meereen, but you know who else is from Westeros? Your freaking queen! And if you're a former slave, you know her as Misa, you know, the one that freaking freed you! But whatever. Anyway, Jorah seems to spot something, and he quickly picks up his opponent's spear and throws it at Daenerys' VIP booth. They all duck, thinking they're being attacked, but the spear kills a man wearing the mask of the Sons of the Harpy, who was probably sneaking up on Daenerys. I understand why Dany or none of her advisors noticed this because they were fixated on Jorah. But surely she would have some unsullied guards there that to guard the side of the VIP booth. I mean, what the hell were they doing? Sleeping on the job? So after Jorah kills that man, they notice a whole shitload of masked Sons of the Harpies spring up everywhere and prepare for a massive attack. It's a good thing they were wearing those masks so we can tell which ones are which. Anyway, they start all wreaking havoc in the whole stadium, slaughtering people at random, and a big group of them converge on the VIP booth. Hizdahr shouts he knows where they can hide, but then is killed by several Sons of the Harpy. Now, there's been a theory floating around a lot of people on board with that Hizdahr was involved with the Sons of the Harpy, and perhaps even the leader of that group. However, I was never on board with this theory, particularly after the episode we got 2 weeks ago where Daario mentioned the possibility that Hizdahr could be working with the Sons of the Harpy. As soon as he said that, I knew it wouldn't be the case because he wouldn't outright tell the audience this if it were the case. And so I take the fact that he was killed by several Sons of the Harpy as confirmation of this. I know there are several people still trying to insist that he was involved with the Sons of the Harpy and that they betrayed him or something like that. But I think that's ridiculous. If he was working with the Sons of the Harpy, they wouldn't have killed him. And he most certainly wasn't their leader. I think he was just a man who was invested in Daenerys' rule because he would benefit as king. Anyway, Jorah comes up and kills a few Harpies and then offers his hand to Daenerys, who takes it, and Jorah leads her down into the fighting pits. Now, I know a lot of people are going to be freaking out because Dany touched Jorah and he has cooties, so now they're going to be thinking that she has grayscale, but just calm down. In order to contract the disease, you have to touch the infected area, and Jorah isn't infected on his hand, he's infected on his wrist and arm, which were well covered, so Dany is fine. Anyway, Harpy approaches Missandei and looks like she's going to get killed, but then Tyrion sneaks up behind him and kills him and then leads Missandei to safety. God damn, that was awesome. Always great to see Tyrion stepping up like that. So Jorah tries to lead them out of an exit, but it's blocked and the Harpies spring up on them. So they go back into the pits, try to make for the other exit, but tons of Harpy come pouring out of that exit, and the whole shitload of them pour into the arena and converge on them, and they are surrounded and completely outnumbered. So at this stage, what I want to know is, where the hell are the Unsullied, and the Second Sons for that matter? You would think that the Second Sons would be at the fighting pits watching the fights. Seems like something they do on their free time. I guess maybe the rest are out patrolling the streets. Maybe it's taking them a while to get there and they end up getting there at the end of the fight after Daenerys flies away and they help calm the situation down and take care of the few remaining stragglers. And for that matter, where the hell is Grey Worm? Is he still recovering from his injuries? That was a while ago that happened. So anyway, Dany and her group are surrounded and outnumbered, and the Harpies start to close in on her, and Daenerys holds Missandei's hand, and you can tell she's thinking this is the end and they're all going to die. But then you hear this screech, and here comes Drogon, and he starts lighting the Harpies on fire and splitting people in half. In fact, I love how he rips this guy in half and throws his torso at a group of Harpies. So I think Drogon still has a special connection with Daenerys and could sense that she was in mortal danger, so decided to come protect his mother. In fact, I was thinking when Dany got that look on her face when she thought she was going to die is that she's the mother of dragons. Her power and her magic is greater than her opponents will ever know. This is the person who called upon 3 little baby dragons to burn the warlocks and all their magic alive. This is the person who walked into a burning fire and came out alive with 3 baby dragons. This is someone you do not fuck with. And I think she remembers her power and her strength as when Drogon starts to get injured by the Harpy throwing spears, she goes up to him, pulls out a few of the spears, and climbs onto his back, tells him to fly, so they fly away together with Daenerys riding on his back. And by this stage, there are very few Harpies left, and I think the few of them lost all their will to fight when they saw their target flying away. So, What's interesting here is a few episodes back when Jorah was talking to Tyrion about what a true believer he was in Daenerys after seeing her climb into the fire and to hear the song of the baby dragons, that this was that moment for Tyrion where he thought he was about to die, but instead he sees the dragon come in and kill all their enemies, and to hear his song as Dany climbs on his back and goes for a ride, you can just see the look on his face as she's flying off, that he's completely awestruck. So I reckon that he's a true believer in Daenerys now as well. Overall, this scene was freaking amazing. In fact, I think that's a bit of an understatement. After I watched the episode, I watched this scene again 3 more times in a row. I've never done that before. I think this may even be my favorite scene of the entire series. I remember reading this scene in the books and just being in awe. It was just so freaking amazing. And to see it on screen brought back that same feeling. In fact, in some ways, it was even more amazing because you actually got to see it. You got to see Daenerys climb on Drogon's back and see Drogon fry all those people alive. It was just so good. So my rating for The Dance with Dragons is a 10, the best. Like last week's episode, this episode is a serious contender for my top 10 of the entire series. Although I'm not quite ready to choose between the two of them yet. I love them both in different ways. Although I know a lot of people are going to probably prefer last week's episode because a lot of people are going to be down on this episode because Dorne was in it and because of the Stannis thing. But like I said, I don't really have a problem with Dorne, and I thought it worked out fine in this episode, and I really like the Stannis scenes. And I mean, I like it in the same masochistic way that I like the Red Wedding. If I may be so bold, even though the scene may not have been as impactful as the Red Wedding, I think it was almost there, and overall I liked it better than the Red Wedding because I had certain problems with the Red Wedding from a narrative point of view because it was just too much of the Starks always losing. Didn't seem like a very dynamic storytelling. Whereas here, it was difficult to watch, in some ways more so, but it served the overall narrative structure much better. Well, at least in my opinion. So this episode was like having the Red Wedding and Dany's epic sacking of Astapor in the same episode. The latter scene used to be my favorite scene of the whole series, but I think this scene with Drogon just topped it. Seeing Daenerys finally jump on Drogon and go for a ride was just so epic. So before I close this video, I just want to talk briefly about the promo for next week's episode. I'm not going to talk about the whole promo, just one aspect of it. So if you consider that sort of thing a spoiler and would rather not know, now's the time to back out of the video. So in the promo for next week's episode, they show that it stopped snowing in Stannis' camp, and it's all good to march to Winterfell, and so Melisandre naturally attributes this to sacrificing Shireen. But personally, I hope that's not all Shireen's death was good for. That doesn't seem like a very good bargain to me, just to make it stop snowing. In Season 3, Melisandre suggested burning Gendry would help raise stone dragons. And you're saying burning Shireen just makes it stop snowing? Come on, her life has got to be worth more than that. So that's it for my review of The Dance with Dragons. If you have read the books, be sure to check out my discussion video with Efkin Tomka, which will be on my channel this week. And if you have any questions you'd like to submit for our Q&A session we do in that video, just leave a comment below and mark it as Q&A so I know it's meant for that video, and we may discuss it in our discussion video. Be sure to check out my channel and subscribe to keep up with all that, and thanks a lot for watching.